My grandfather was Russian. My father played the balalaika, and he wanted a guitarist to accompany him. So when I was 9, I was taught classical guitar. But by the time I was 11, I was doing concerts in London. You know, I was really good at it. Then when I was 12, I had a lot of accidents to my fingers and nails came off. And if you haven't got perfect nails, you know, you forget guitar playing. I mean, classical. So I then went on to harpsichord. And then when I left school at 16, I went straight to art school. I had 5 years there where I took up clarinet, saxophone. The Temperance Seven started, Chelsea, 1954, and I was in it playing the banjo. But I was so bored with playing the banjo that I left because I'd heard some Jerry Mulligan, modern jazz. He'd just come over to London, and for me that was it really. Although of course I did start on the double bass, playing in Dixieland groups. And then I had 4 years of absolute misery, really starving in a garret, very, very difficult. So my father rang me up one day and said there's a double bass going in King Street in Hammersmith for £12. So I scraped up £12. This is 1960. And bought the bass, and I played it for a fortnight. I just dropped everything until my hands were running with blisters and blood and everything, and it was a little bass with big thick gut strings that coming to bits and were whipping, you know, and no amplifier or anything like that. And I played to jazz records. I had a lot of LPs of jazz, so I just played and played and played and played. And then a friend of mine who was an amateur guitarist, he said, "Oh, there's a magazine here called The Melody Maker. Somebody wants a bass for tonight." So I said, "Don't be ridiculous. I've only had this for a fortnight, and look at my hands." And he said, "Well, it's 7 and 6. I said, "Right." So I got on the number 22. I didn't have a car, with the bass standing on the platform bit, holding it, sitting on the side, and no case or anything like that. And I went to this place, this little hall, and there was this little Dixieland jazz band. I went in there, and of course the eyebrows were raised. You can imagine, 1960, a girl, young girl, bass player. I mean, they were so bad. They were doing sort of 9-bar blues and 14-bar blues, and everything was wrong. And I thought, well, I know how long a 12-bar blues is, you know. And if they can make money doing this, I'll carry on doing it. And then I joined Keith Tippett group, which was very modern. Then he formed a huge band, a 50-piece band called Centipede, because it had 100 legs. And that was exciting because we went all over the place. We went to France a lot. We played in all sorts of huge places, you know, the Albert Hall and everywhere. London was changing in the late 70s, but I did get my most well-paid job in the West End, playing on stage with I think it was about an 8-piece band, Pal Joey. That was like 8 shows a week, you know, and that was paid really well. Because before that, I was so skint, I actually joined Putney Post Office and was posting letters all over the place. And so I was in that for 5 months, but it wasn't pleasant. The owner of the theatre, the Albury Theatre, he sacked the producer, the director, on the night of the run-through before opening the next day. He sacked him. So he buggered off to France. And so then we were there all night, redoing the whole thing. I would rather have scrubbed floors. But in fact, when I came up here, that's what I did. I scrubbed floors because I had no money and I was on the dole. Came for 4 days holiday, and I suddenly saw this fantastic barn and just a bare meadow. We had a job when I came up. We were working on the piers at Yarmouth, which were absolutely horrendous jobs, I have to say. Cannonball were the most horrible people in the world. I mean, it was just awful. My husband, who's an alcoholic, got the sack because he was a trumpet player and he couldn't reach high notes very often. And I thought, I'm not going to have him living here in life of luxury while I go out every night to Yarmouth working. So I left. I then went cleaning. I just cleaned people's houses in Needham. I cleaned the cherry tree every day for ages, months. And I was on the dole. And then I just had one or two pupils from the village, Then, because I was up here in early 1981, and in 1984, when my husband left, I had a little concert here, and it was classical. I'd formed this octet with mostly teachers, very good players. It was absolutely wonderful. But then we did one concert and we outnumbered the audience. I thought, this is no good. So I then had the idea of bringing some friends up from London, some jazz people, so they came. The place was packed. So it's been jazz ever since, really. Jazz and world music, I met some friends who lived in Bungay, and this guy, Sagi Man, don't know if you know him, painter, he's now blind but still painting. He used to play drums, and he used to play in a band that I was in. He used to rehearse in my kitchen in Putney, and he looked totally different. He then was very sort of spotty. He had glasses that thick, he had a beard, he was always grumpy, and when he heard my name and that I was here, he came over with his wife. I didn't recognise him. He was clean shaven with a hat and, of course, nearly blind. And he had a lot of friends in Bungay, so we formed a little kids band, and in fact I've got photos of most of my children's bands, and that was the first one, 1984. And then in the end I had 4 bands a week of children, plus about 20 pupils a week, so I was working 7 days a week, just to get through and paying the bills here and all that sort of thing.